And the first thing I'd love to do is acknowledge the country that we are all living and working on and enjoying, and my hopes for that this renewable energy transition decentralises us, and we can learn a lot about governance from our First Nations communities, especially that making decisions has more than just making decisions about ourselves socially. It has to do with making decisions about our planet. So we're in this together. So without further ado, I had a little hiccup. I had promised to do the slide management, but Anne's slides have knocked me about a little bit. So Anne is going to share directly from her slide deck and get us started. So the reason I chose Anne, Mark, and Ed as our speakers is because they have three different experiences of community energy, and Coalition for Community Energy is rebranding to Energy Together this year. Our vision is that everybody can participate in the energy transition. We think community energy is a really fundamental way that happens. And so it's really great from my perspective that each community chooses its own priorities and does quite different things, because these tell our energy sector different things about what they need to be doing to help us transition as well. So without further ado, Anne, over to you, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Heather, and welcome everybody. Great to see so many people from different parts of Australia on the call this evening. Just shows all the activity that's going on in DER or CER or whatever people want to call it. I'm chair of Zero Emissions Noosa. We started as a community group back in 2017. This was after our council made a strategic policy decision in 2016 to have the target of net zero community greenhouse gas emissions by 2026. The size of the task is, and what we concentrate on basically is residential and business energy, stationary energy, the two parts of the pie chart on the right of the diagram, and the bit at the bottom as well. The section on the left we also work on, and that's transport, leaving the rest of the small little bits for our council to do. The biggest part of that is waste from the local dump or tip, depending which state you come from. So we're working on this big chunk of the pie as volunteers. The council's working on the small chunk of the pie, which is them as an organisation. However, they are starting to do some things around community energy, but they often say we're their public face of the work in the energy transition space. Our vision is net zero community greenhouse gas emissions across the Noosa region. We did take off by 2026 when we noticed about 18 months ago that the council was no longer talking about by 2026 because we weren't going to get there. And our mission is addressing climate change through emissions reduction. So all the projects and advocacy work we do is aimed really at climate change emissions reduction, but I'll talk more about how we do that in a minute. So that's why we do it. What we do, we actually, as I've said, concentrate on business and residential emissions and also transport emissions. So we don't cover waste for various reasons. How we work together with our local council, and this is one of the things that Heather asked me to speak about, is that we say we help council to implement a whole range of their plans. So you can see on the left there in the corporate plan, there's 5 different themes, 2 on the next slide, and listed next to those in the right-hand column are the various plans that the Noosa Council have in that particular corporate plan theme. So our work touches on all of these in some way. You might say, well, how on earth does it touch on the social Noosa Social Strategy and Social Justice Charter. Uh, that's through a program for solar for low-income homes, for example. So in the other two sectors on the corporate plan theme, an example of what we do in the local disaster to help the local disaster management plan is basically helping households and businesses to become more energy resilient and less reliant on centralised energy systems in the wake of natural disasters. Uh, so we say we value add to the Noosa Council and the Noosa community in these various different ways. We lead their community emissions reduction journey. We use evidence-based reports, so there is a solid base for whatever we do. We develop resources, engage the community, advocate for various different things. At the moment, we're advocating for our council to introduce paid parking as a revenue stream to help them to fund all the great plans they've got in their walking and cycling and transport strategy, which they can't implement because they haven't got the funds to do it. And our work is aimed at behaviour change, because when you get behaviour change, you get emissions reduction. So that's why we say we value add for not only the council but the Noosa community. How do we do this? Well, a number of different ways, and I'm sure many of you are also doing this around the countryside. So, as I mentioned, advocacy. We also just did a submission, for example, recently to the Queensland Government after their e-mobility inquiry, where they're trying to introduce some rather far-reaching rules around e-transport, particularly e-bikes and e-scooters. Community engagement. Last year we had 11 different community forums, and they were with various different community groups or at our local library. And in terms of awareness raising and behaviour change, we have an EV Expo, an Electrify Everything Expo every year, and I'll say more about that in a minute. In terms of projects that we run, in other words, how we do try and work on this behaviour change, we're one of the communities that work with Rewiring Australia and Electrify Everything, and I'm sure many of you on the line are also following their lead. We had Saul Griffiths come to visit last year, which was a great way of rallying people in the community to actually hear from the horse's mouth all about how you do this. As I mentioned, we've had community forums. Last Sunday, we partnered with Renew Australia to open 3 homes in the Noosa Shire for Sustainable House Day. So we had groups of people coming through looking and talking with the householders about what they've done to electrify everything in their home, including in this particular slide down on the photo down on the bottom right. That member of our group does run his house from time to time from his Tesla. In terms of what we do with business, we have a Save Energy, Save Money for Business program. These KPIs are actually a bit outdated now. We have a business energy advisor, that's Josh in the photo on the left in the navy shirt. He works 1 day a week with businesses, basically looking at their energy management, energy efficiency, how they can save, any way that they can save money, and whether there's a good return on investment for their investment in solar batteries and a possible EV charger. These figures are out of date, as I said, but he has now actually in year 1, well, actually the first 6 months of the project, been able to save businesses $45,000. So over a 10-year period, that's $450,000. Which is a substantial saving. Our council is concerned mainly about trying to do something for cost of living relief. So we actually frame our projects in terms of how we help people to save money. We don't talk about emissions reduction. Everyone's eyes glaze over when you do that. So we talk about how people can save money. And by saving money, they change their behaviour, or to save money, they change their behaviour. And hence we get emissions reduction. We have some business case studies on our website. Last year, we were lucky enough to be funded by council to have solar installed on 10 low-income homes, which has really helped people like Irene there in the photo to be able to run her air conditioner during the day now and enjoy a more comfortable life. We have had a Solar for Strata project in the past, and on our website is an online toolkit about the experience and how we did it, how you can do it. But it is a really tricky area, lots of challenges. We have a community-owned community battery in Noosa, the only one in Queensland. We did originally want 100 community batteries for Noosa, but we'll be happy with one because it's taken 5 years of our life. So we're not going to devote any more time to community batteries because Energex in Queensland just want business as usual. So they are owning and operating all the other batteries, making it very difficult for community batteries to be financially viable. Oh, sorry, Heather, I did forget to delete the video, so that's why. This is our expo we run every year.
You've had the solar cars in town as well, huh?
Yes.
Junction. Everyone's here today. It's going to be a wonderful day. 33% of our emissions come from transport. So looking at alternative sustainable transport solutions, whether they be bikes, scooters, or indeed cars, is certainly on our high list of priorities to reduce those emissions across our shire.
We want to facilitate the people, bring all this knowledge here, all the bikes, all the electric stuff, and Noosa Council is right behind zero emissions Noosa.
The things that are going to make the air cleaner and greener, not only for our health, but the health of the environment.
The electric ute, it's a great way for a tradie or someone like that to be able to get around and save money in their business by saving on those fuel costs.
We believe in decarbonising the way that we make cars. So Polestar's mission is to create the first climate neutral car by 2030. Electric vehicles are critical for being able to reduce our emissions. So we do everything we possibly can to try and make them more accessible to a broader range of people.
We've got a great offer today on our secured green loan, which is at 4.99%. So trying to get word out there so that everyone can come have a chat with us and we can get them into an electric vehicle.
The car is actually powering the stage and the speakers on the stage. So we can also charge the car from our solar at home. So it's basically a fully renewably energy powered stage and sound system.
So, do you have much more, Anne, or are we going to run out of time for all your slides?
I didn't look at so that highlights the expo that we have every year. I didn't look at when we started, so if I've run out of time, I'll leave it there and people can ask questions if they want to later.
Fantastic. And I encourage you all to put questions in the chat. We're going to have questions at the end, and unless some really specific ones come up in the chat as people talk. And I will share. Mark, are you happy for me to share your slides from here, or would you like to drive yourself?
You do it.
Okay, let me put this into PowerPoint mode, and then excuse me while I try to do everything. There we go. Over to Mark from Electrify Bouddi.
Great. Okay. Thanks very much, Heather. And so, as Heather said, I think we've been selected to talk because we represent diversity in the community energy group environment. And I also realised that, I've been sold a pup here following Anne because
Not at all. It's horses for courses.
Zero Emission Noosa has been an inspiration to a lot of groups and certainly to us. And I think it's worth saying that, you know, we probably represent the other end of the spectrum, which is very small and very new. But, you know, there is some advantages to that, which I'll go and talk about in a minute. And one of the advantages is we can all benefit from all the experience and knowledge and resources that have been developed by groups like Net Zero Noosa. So just to introduce you to Bouddi, this is on the Central Coast, New South Wales. You can see a picture of it. If you go to the next slide. Thank you. So we're about 100 kilometres north of Sydney on the coast, and you can see we're surrounded by sea and national park. So we're a very defined community. We have about 1,400 houses, and it's an extraordinarily close-knit community. It's also a popular holiday destination, as is most of the Central Coast, but we are particularly, and around 40% of our dwellings are used for holiday rentals and the like. Not all the time, but some of the time. So that has some particular issues for us to address. There are about 15 commercial community venues in our community, and they range from sort of large luxury hotels, surf clubs, the usual smattering of cafes, restaurants and shops, and community buildings such as halls and churches and stuff. So we started in around June 2023. We were initiated by, I think, around 8 residents who were already involved in environmental groups, etc. And there was, I think most people were attracted to the idea primarily by a lack of government action on greenhouse, frustration caused by that at the time, and also lots of confusion about what practical actions everyday householders could take. So that's just to sort of set the scene, I suppose. And next slide, please. So in terms of our genesis, and because we're new, I thought we'd just talk about that very briefly. We went through about 6 months as a establishment phase. So we got ourselves incorporated, got a steering committee together, got a charitable status set up, and defined our mission. So I won't read that out now, but you're welcome to read it. It's generally about providing guidance, information and knowledge, and helping people to navigate their way through the transition. We also did quite a bit of work in this phase in understanding how our community uses energy, what proportion of residences have solar, rooftop solar and heat pumps and all the various end uses. So we had some sort of basic data on which to work for. So I guess we came out of that process with 3 key kind of philosophies that have helped shape us. So first is we're all about helping people on their journey. They may start in different places, they may have different issues to address, but we're here to help them through that process. And we're trying to help them to define what are the practical things that people can do now. So the idea that people want to do something and they want to do it quickly and see results was quite important. And also trying to define what's actually stopping people from doing anything now has informed what we've done. So in helping people on their journey, that means we have to address all their potential motivations, so greenhouse gases, fuel bills, comfort, plus others. What are the practical things people can do now? So that means we have to focus on all the household options. So supply and demand side, and from major investments, solar batteries, EVs, right down to draft proofing, behavioural change, low cost options as well. And we made the decision early on that we were going to leave major community infrastructure projects until a bit later down the track, because we recognised that it would take most of our time and effort for a considerable period of time, and that wouldn't be addressing people's need to move ahead now quickly. And what's preventing them? Well, I think we define trusted information as one of the key barriers, where to start in the process, and the access to reliable quality installers. So that won't come as any surprise to anyone else, but it was very good to define that those barriers early on and seek to address them. So how do we do it? Well, we do it through all the usual things, public information, newsletters, social media, website, and etc. that you can see there. I guess one of the early things that we developed was a 3-year strategic plan. And we went through a fairly exhaustive process of community consultation to develop that and get ownership for that. But that was quite successful. So over the 2 or so years we've been operating, we think we've doubled the solar capacity of the area from a low base, admittedly. We have something like 12 partner installers, so solar batteries, but also hot water, air conditioners, insulation installers, electrical maintenance, and others. And we've sort of settled on a regime where we run 4 or so information nights at the pub, mixing alcohol and education, which is a dangerous mix. And we get about 40 to 70 attending each night. We do what we call a major trade fair, but by standards of Noosa, it's a tiny little thing. But it does give our local people a chance to talk to our installers. And we get something like 250, 350 attend that. We do 4 newsletters. We run an energy trivia fundraising night to raise money. And on Monday, we opened our first EV fast charger in the area, which we've been working on for a year with the NRMA. And it's the first one in New South Wales that is fully funded by the NRMA. So I think most people will be familiar with volunteering and using volunteers. But I might just talk a little about the structure. We have 260 members. There's no membership fee, so we want to create no barriers to coming on board and participating. And that represents about 15% of the residences in our area. We've got a steering committee, oversees everything, currently 7 members, and around 40 to 60 active volunteers. And they're organised within these topic areas that you can see here, and each are coordinated. And each topic area reports to the steering committee monthly. They meet every 2 to 4 months, and they have a 12-month work plan. And they basically do all the work within those topic areas and are where our volunteers are most active. So just points of difference about what we're doing. So we're very small scale. That means we can use things like word of mouth as a communication tool. We can go around and visit houses and measure how many solar panels and batteries and things like that we've got on individual houses. we can tie into existing networks because it's an incredibly incestuous little community that we live in. And we can use the personal connections as a result of that. So for us, the demand side is just as important as the supply side. It gives us speed of impacts. Everyone can do it, and they can do it quickly, and it allows inclusion of low-cost options and vulnerable households and all of that. And I.
Sorry.
And I've obviously come to the end of my time.
Very good. Sorry to push you off there, Mark.
No, I mean, if I could say one thing, I just one extra thing, which is that we see bringing people, volunteering is not only helpful to our organisation for what we can do with others, but it's also a learning experience for our volunteers, so which is just as important. So, I would say that through volunteering, we've increased the energy literacy of a substantial part of our community. And the best thing is when you walk into a cafe or something and you hear someone who 2 years ago didn't know anything about energy, but is telling everyone what they should be doing. That's just an extraordinary achievement and makes you feel as though it's all worthwhile. So thank you.
Fantastic. I do have questions about volunteers, but I'm going to hold them over and encourage everyone to put questions in the chat. And the man you've all been waiting for, Ed, is going to talk about quite a different way of tackling community energy with the Goulburn Solar Farm. Over to you, Ed. And there's the picture I pulled off the web for you. But I don't know, you've got all these beautiful ones with lots of people, but this was the one that gave me a sense of where it is and what it looks like. So I hope you don't mind me using this one.
Yeah, no, that's really good. And Mark, I was interested in yours. My wife and I sold a beach house in Kilcare 20 years ago and bought 230 acres of dirt just outside Goulburn. We didn't want to live by the sea anymore. So look, ours is a story of a community-owned solar farm, and what I thought I would do is just talk you through the journey of what we've had to do to get to where we've got, which may lead to questions, or it may just give you a feel, because compared to what Noosa is doing and what Mark is attempting to do in Bouddi, this is very different. But I'm not saying it's better or at all. Our journey actually goes right back to 2007. And one of the questions I'm often asked is, so what do you need if you're going to build something of this sort of size, be it a wind farm or a solar farm? What are the essentials? And the two essentials, I believe, are one, and I think Anne and Mark have got this, but a group of volunteers who are utterly and totally dependable, whose patience level are enormous, and who will never, ever give up, because there have been so many times when we've wanted to give up. So that's number one. Number two is engage with the community. You cannot, I believe, come up with a plan for this is a $5.5 million solar farm and have the plans already and then go and ask the community to contribute. They need to be part of it along the entire journey. So in Goulburn, there's a group called the Goulburn Group, which was founded in 2007. It was just a bunch of people concerned about sustainability issues, environmental issues, etc., in the town and the surrounding area. And to give you a feel for the kinds of things that group have done since its inception, they include turning an area within Goulburn, it's about 20 or 30 or even 40 hectares, I'm not quite sure, of completely toxic ex-industrial land. It was a cesspit of filth. That has been turned over a 10-year period into the Goulburn wetlands, and it's now a place of nature. Water comes in and goes away again depending on the seasons. It's full of local flora and fauna. It's not there for humans. Humans can visit it, but there's no play equipment, there's no barbecues. It's a place of nature within the town. It's an extraordinary achievement. They also, we initiated and set up Goulburn's first free Wi-Fi. We were the ones who persuaded Tesla and the local council to put, it was at the time Tesla's biggest fast charging station right in the middle of Goulburn, not on the outskirts somewhere, and not in Marulan or some other nearby town. We ran a Goulburn Goes Solar campaign at the time when the New South Wales government was offering 65 cents per kilowatt for rooftop solar, and we persuaded an awful lot of people to put on solar panels. Like Noosa, we've run major sustainability festivals. We haven't done that recently, but we used to get 200 stalls and thousands of visitors. They were extraordinary events. And in the middle of so the community was used to us when the community energy solar farm became a potential. That all started in about 2014 when a small bunch of people went to a seminar in Canberra about community energy. At that were 3 or 4 members of the Goulburn Group. There was a senior manager from the business that owns the land you can see on which the solar panels are on the screen. And there was a worker at the time, it was the Department of Energy and Heritage and Energy. No, it wasn't. Environment and Heritage, New South Wales Government Department. They were there talking about community energy, but at that meeting, the government man mentioned, the government's got $50,000 grant for feasibility studies for community energy projects. And those 3 or 4 people went back home, sat around a kitchen table with a bottle of wine and thought, I won't use the expletive word beginning with F, but F it. No one's doing anything at any government level about reducing emissions, about reducing fossil fuels, about renewable energy. We will do it ourselves. So, and I was part of that group. We applied for and got the feasibility study grant. That took about 6 months. Was the project financially viable, socially viable? Would it get community support? Would it achieve, in other words, could it be done? And the answer in the end was yes. And in 2015, we ran one of those big sustainability festivals at which we held a business breakfast with John Hewson, the fairly well-known politician, as a guest speaker. At that, we announced that the feasibility study was positive and that we have every intention of building a community-owned solar farm in Goulburn. So this was out in the public very early on. So that was 2015. By 2018, we had worked through the entire project. We'd costed it. We knew what it would cost to buy 4,000 or 5,000 panels, the racking, the inverters, the transformers. We knew all that. And we then went to market to find someone to build it for us. And we ended up with a short list of 3 companies, 2 of them large international companies, 1 an Australian local company. And by August 2018, we had a memorandum of understanding and were drafting contracts with the Australian company. And we were virtually ready to go. Then the first major hiccup occurred when Malcolm Turnbull was ousted by Scott Morrison at federal level, and the whole renewable market changed almost instantly. Renewable energy targets were under fire. To risk finding investors under those circumstances was very dangerous, and we could not, we felt, go to the community and ask for the $2.5 or $3 million, I forget what the number was, to ask for their money when the whole renewable energy market was under so much attack. So we put it on hold, and frankly, we thought it had gone. But about a few months later, one of the people with whom we'd been having discussions called us and said, they've founded a company called Como Energy, designed to assist community groups like us do kinds of projects that we were doing. Could he help? And we went, well, yes, you probably could, but we're not sure this is viable. Almost simultaneously, the New South Wales government under Matt Keane came up with the Regional Community Energy Fund, which was a grant system whereby they would supply money, capital cost money, for projects like ours. So we dropped everything, applied for that grant, and I've got to tell you, that was one of the most complex documents I've ever seen in my life. It was unbelievable. But we were asking for, we'd worked out by then that the cost of what we wanted to do was 4.2 million. The government was prepared to put up half of that on the basis that we raised the other half from the local community. So we put the application in, and about 4 or 6 months later, we got the phone call saying, ta-da, we're going to give, you're in the grant. And I was walking across the park in Goulburn at the time, and I remember to ask him, how much? And he went 2.1 million, at which I've got to say, I just burst into tears. It was just an extraordinary moment. So what we had to do then, we had to raise 2.1 million ourselves. 50% of that as a minimum had to come from the local community. So 1.05 had to come from Goulburn. We could get the rest from elsewhere, borrow it, do whatever. But that would mean it could be called a community-owned solar farm. So that was in late 2019. Then COVID hit, and it was bloody difficult to do anything except keep the community involved and knowing what was going on. But in November 2020, we held the first public meeting post-COVID in Goulburn. So if you remember those times, everything was in lockdown. You never went out, you never met a friend, you didn't go to the pub, you didn't go to the cafe. So this was the first public meeting. Our worst nightmare was that no one would turn up. Our next worst nightmare was that 5 or 6 would turn up, listen, and then go away again. But what happened is this. We had a taped message from John Hewson. About 100 people turned up. We presented all the technical details, the number of panels, the output, the megawatts, etc., etc. We then went into the financials about how much it would cost, what the potential revenue would be, cash flows over 10 years, sinking funds over 10 years to replace panels, etc. We had by then formed a cooperative, and I might come back to why we chose that in a minute. But at the end of that presentation, we said to that 100 people, okay, if you want to be part of this, you go and join the cooperative and you tell us how much you're going to invest. And within an hour, we had raised $500,000, $500,000. We then ran the same meeting online a week later for those who could not or would not come to a public meeting, and we raised a further $750,000. So within a week, we had raised 1.25 million. We had blitzed the government minimum target of 1.05, and we were on the way. And within about 3 months, we'd mopped up and raised the rest. So that was the financial bit. So we then had effectively 4.2 million in the bank, and we went off and found someone who'd build it, etc. It took 4 years, which was way, way, way longer than we anticipated. The things that caused those delays were first COVID itself. There wasn't almost a single manufacturing plant anywhere on the planet that hadn't gone into lockdown, and that included panels and racking and inverters and the whole lot.
I'm going to give you a 1 minute warning here, so speed you up.
Okay, I'll move on. So it's now finished. After 4 years of delays, we had the opening ceremony about 6 weeks ago. We had 200 plus investors. We had parliamentarians. We had media. We had the most gigantic party. In the end, the thing has cost 5.5 million because we put on a way bigger battery than we initially anticipated. We got 2.3 in total from the government. We ended up raising 3.2 from the local community. 80% of that is within our postcode. There are 288 registered investors, which equals about 400 human beings. And it's done such a wonderful thing for Goulburn. We're not the backward, inward-looking country town. There are many, 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 many of us who have done this, and we're very proud of what we've done.
Fantastic. So I'm going to invite people to ask questions. I have a bunch myself. There is a way we can do this in a quite organized manner, which is you on the react button, you can actually raise your hand is one of the options if you click on that react button. Thank you all to all of our speakers. So great to hear what you're all doing there. So if I don't see any hands or hear any butt-ins, I'm going to start the questions. I want to go back to Anne. You know, so many wonderful activities in Noosa over the period, such a great relationship with council that has helped fund that a little bit, but obviously, you know, volunteers like Mark's story are such a powerhouse. Do you have a reflection, and maybe this is for all three of you, do you have a reflection on whose job it is? You know, a lot of us are stepping up because government's not doing what we might expect. But, you know, what's your perspective on who should make all of this happen and how hard volunteers should have to work?
Go ahead, Ed. No, go ahead.
Look, I mean, we've done what we've done in an environment where all our elected representatives are actively opposing large renewable projects in the region. So our federal minister used to be Angus Taylor. Our state member is now a Labour, is still Liberal and makes an awful lot of noise against these things. Our council, there are 9 councillors, they voted unanimously against large commercial projects in our region. So we've had to do it ourselves. And I'm jealous of you in Noosa because we've had close to no support whatsoever, even from our council. They've done little bits, but if they could be slow or obstructive, to be honest, it's felt as if they've been deliberately of that ilk. So Noosa, well done. In other words, we have to do it ourselves.
What do you think, Anne?
Somebody said it early on. I think it was Ed, that you need people, passionate volunteers. And when we started our journey, the Queensland government wasn't really on, there was just starting the renewables journey. We've had and then they had the Energy and Jobs Plan, which was a fantastic plan, and implementing lots of things, large-scale projects and medium-sized projects. And so we fitted really well into that community energy niche. We had a change of government about 18 months ago, and a lot of those projects are no longer happening. So it's really back to community activists and concerned communities to push government to do what we can, but also do what we can in our own local area.
Yeah, great. And Mark, what your thoughts on that question, and how much actual financial support have you guys had?
So I mean, I often talk about what we're doing as actually re-empowering communities. I think you know, there's many ways in which the energy transition can go, and if it's not communities having a say in that process, then some people are going to be left behind and not benefit. So, you know, I'm saying to the community, you've got to be part of this, because otherwise, because you've got to make it work for you. And I think that's the reason why, you know, there should always be communities, you know, voice and active involvement in the process. And I don't want, you know, someone from somewhere else telling us how this transition is going to go, because, you know, there are going to be people in the community that are going to miss out then. So that's my.
Well,
I mean, we have almost zero funding from outside. It's all raised from our community. We had $3,000 from local government last year, I think, but. You know,
I was totally wowed by your numbers of how many volunteers you've got and how many members you've got. It's amazing and fantastic. Nick, I'll let you ask a question.
Thank you. I'm curious to understand. You know, obviously, there's a lot of individual support for these projects. But I'm wondering about the industries and the businesses that are in the regions, and what sort of proportion. You know, how much support you get from those as well.
To everyone?
Yeah, any of
Who would like to answer that first?
Yeah, I'll go. I mean, the businessman who owns most of the land on which our solar farm is now placed has been very supportive. We have a commercial lease from him. He describes it as peppercorn. I know it's not, because I was the one who negotiated with him. But it's on the generous side of normal. We tried to use local businesses wherever we could, and so a local company did all the civil works. A local company built the fence. A local company's done all the drainage and stuff like that. But when it comes to building a solar farm, the company we used, you know, there isn't one in Goulburn. It's Sydney/Wagga based. We've used high voltage engineers as close as we can. We've done it as much as we can in Goulburn, but you know, it's bloody hard, and 95% of the hardware's come from China.
Yeah, I get that. I'm more curious about the actual membership of the cooperative, and whether there's a lot of support from local businesses for that, and also the other speakers with there in Noosa, and sorry, I forgot the name. Bouddi, yeah, whether they're supportive as well.
Okay, well, our co-op members, so there's 288 of them. About 240 are local. They tend to be individuals or couples or someone's self-managed super fund or whatever. There's very little corporate support as such, which I don't think is. Yeah, I mean, there are local businessmen who are members, but they've done it through their own name, not through their business.
Okay.
Yeah, if that answers the question.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks.
You seem to have a whole bunch of businesses on board, and you've got a business stream in the work you deliver. How have you found the business community?
Is that to me?
No, that was Anne.
Oh, interesting shift. When I first came to Zero Emissions Noosa in 2018, they were predominantly solar installation companies that were actively involved in the group. Now we very rarely see them even to any of our working group meetings. They often used to come along to working group meetings. Now they're all too busy. I can't even get a quote from them. So we have had a very definite policy, though, of not promoting any particular product or service, because the only thing we have as a not-for-profit is our trusted name and brand, and we guard that very closely. because some of those people who were involved in the early days of zero emissions Noosa were keen to be able to market themselves as members of zero emissions Noosa and use it for their own commercial benefit. So hence we went the way of not promoting any particular product or service. But we do actually last year made our first commercial arrangement with a local business, Energy Flex, who has an app which monitors people's energy use, and people can use it for free before they have to get into the paid stream to get more applications. The reason we did that was because at our forums, people want to take action. They're ready to go, but they don't know what to do or how to do it. So this was a really easy first step to be able to recommend them to this. Well, yes, we do recommend them to the Energy Flex app because it is free. There's no cost to the consumer. They do pay us a very small fee for anyone who signs up, but I think we've made the princely sum of $210 out of it in the last 12 months. So, yeah, we're very careful on the business side of things, and our business energy advisor, the reason that council have funded him is because he's completely independent, and it's a free service for businesses for them to work with him. He's completely independent. He's not trying to sell anything. We had a study done about 4 or 5 years ago here about why businesses weren't taking up solar, and it was time and trust, lack of time and lack of trust. So because this person is employed by us but paid by council, businesses tend to trust him, and he can give them time to go through all the steps that they just don't have time to do in terms of what to do next, how to get quotes, where to get quotes, why this quote might be better than that quote. So yeah, an interesting and varied journey with business.
I think we've got time for one more question, so I'd like to wrap us up with a reflection and starting with you, Mark. Like, I'm so amazed at the level of volunteering and community activation that you've achieved and community engagement that you've achieved. So, but all of you have talked about volunteers and community. Top tip, or is it cultural? Is it related to your community? What are you riffing off to get such great engagement?
Well, I do think scale is one of the issues, and working in a natural community, and I think you know, we are very small, and in lots of ways it would make sense to be bigger, except that if we were bigger, we would give up all those tight connections that make this engagement so, as easy and as positive as it is. And we'd be looking at, a different sort of structure and organization. So, I think if one of the things I see is looking around at different community groups is, there are these natural communities that function as a community, and community energy groups need to be part and embedded in that. And it almost doesn't matter what scale they are, it's what the community, how that sees itself. And we've got lots of communities in the Central Coast. It's quite a big region. It's the third largest in New South Wales, I think. But each community is very different. They have different demographics. They don't have as many visitors and holiday homes, and they have different constraints, and so they would do a different thing. It would be very different if we tried to absorb those communities.
Excellent. A final thought from you, Anne?
We have people the most successful volunteers are the ones who are self-motivated. They're people who want to learn about the process or people who have some professional expertise in the process. So we're very lucky to have a very well-educated and articulate community here. So there's lots of retirees with lots of professional expertise and time.
Fantastic. And Ed?
My colleague described us as a bunch of fuckwits who knew nothing about solar. We knew nothing. We just did it, and if we didn't know, we'd find somebody who did.
Yeah. And that's a great story too. So thank